Musi być wyjątkowe. Pani profesor, you're Brazilian. Pani profesor przedstawi nam temat Uciszony świat Hiszpanii, frankistowska cenzura literacka. 20 minutes, please.
Thank you. So, good morning or good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and assistants, especially Arcadius, for the kind invitation, and also to express my gratitude to all of you for being here today. Next, I will present the paper entitled Silence Word in Spain During the Fascist Era, Literary Censorship Under Francoism. The title differs slightly from the one listed in the program, as I felt it would be more engaging to approach Spain from a transnational perspective and in closer dialogue with the work of my colleagues. For this reason, I added during the fascist era to the title. So the structure, I don't have time to explain, but you can see that is a transnational perspective. I will start talking a little bit about this new culture order of fascism. I will discuss about if this dictatorship in Spain, Portugal, or in Brazil could be named as fascist. And I will enter after in about censorship in Spain, but always I try to do a transnational perspective. So this paper aims to explore the influence of fascism on the culture, literature policies of the government of Francisco Franco in Spain, and also to understand how literary censorship operates under Franco's regime, in which promotion itself was also part of a censorial cultural policy. The fascist dictatorship of Benito Mussolini served as the main source of inspiration for Francisco Franco regime and consequently became model for their cultural policies. In fact, under fascist regimes, the liberal notion of individual artistic inspiration was sought to succumb, and the expression of the creator became the symbol of the ties of the community of souls nation. As the historian Benjamin Martin has agreed in his book, The Nazi-Fascist New Order for European Culture, fascist transnationalism can be seen as a phenomenon that sought to build a new culture order. This new culture order, however, was not only limited to the European continent and the fascist movement, but also directly influenced, however, was not only limited to the European continent and the fascist movement, but also directly influenced the cultural policies of various fascist dictatorships, such as those of Francisco Franco in Spain, Getúlio Vargas in Brazil, and António Salazar in Portugal. Undoubtedly, the Italian political culture model was present as the main model to be followed, thus creating a new international culture order during the fascist era. In this regard, it's important to analyze the relationship between fascism and fascist-sized dictatorship, because this can provide the leading elements in all the most significant European and Latin American dictatorships of the far right. So, fascists, following the argument of Spanish historian Ismael Sass, we can characterize Franco, Salazar, and Getúlio Vargas regime as a fascist-sized nationalist dictatorship, which is a form of hybrid counter-revolutionary dictatorship with a certain level of fascistization, or in other words, with fascist components and points of reference. In Iberian Peninsula and Latin America, fascism was a fundamental ingredient for the formation of new political alternative in the period of First World War and Second World War. Despite the fact that many of the post-liberal regimes incorporate fascist symbolism, such as Vargas or Franco's regime, none of these authoritarian systems can be easily classified as fascist. Yet movements that were clearly fascist did exist in both countries, such as Brazilian integralism or Spanish Falange. Nevertheless, as Roger Griffin has observed, a number right-wing and modernizing conservative regimes in the interwar period made efforts to signal to their subjects and the external world in their style of government that at least semiotically they belonged to identified with a new era of fascism. In this way, we can understand that a process of impregnation of fascist principles, values, and symbols did exist, to the extent that many organized movements, sectors of the right, and even governments underwent a process of radicalization or renewal of their political repertoire. Fascism emerged from a cultural generation of politicians and intellectuals tied to the movement with modernist objective, and as a response to the liberal elitist idea of Western modernity, as well as socialist and anarchist critics. Mussolini defined this as a vanguard destined to lead the replacement of the decadent liberal system. This perspective was based on the idea of a national revolution, greater than a class revolution, not socialist, and was considered the result of new political, social, and cultural actions with fascist states, which, according to Mussolini, embody the revolutionary capacity of a new era. In this way, fascism represents an aesthetic and political revolutionary path and assigned particular importance to the role of culture. In fact, fascism itself was seen as a culture revolution, and for this reason, dictatorships such as Hitler and Mussolini became a type of state poet. Emilio Gentili agrees that, as such, there was a religion dimension present in politics, evident in the fascist culture policy of using ceremonies, marches, political rituals, and symbolism with a clear aesthetic dimension, in order to fuel what was termed the sacralization of politics. Entering in Spain, studies on censorship suggest that despite the existence of permanent control mechanisms, official state censorship in fascist Italy or Nazi Germany was not as organized or systematized as the one implemented in Francoist Spain. The Nazis conceived literature as a vast arena for dissemination the fascist idea. Their ultimate goal was to establish a totalitarian cultural policy characterized by extreme coercion, homogenization, and the mobilization of the population in support of the state and its censorship apparatus. Paradoxically, however, and despite this perversive control, the Third Reich lacked a clearly defined, organized censorship system. Instead, denunciation became a key instrument of Hitler's cultural repression. The pervasive fear of being reported fostered an atmosphere of omnipresent terror, making self-censorship the regime's most effective form of control. A strictly formal system of prior censorship thus proved unnecessary, as the Nazi regime could rely on the active participation and self-policing of the population within a repressive, self-serving society. However, in Spain, after a civil war, Franco needed to implement a highly organized and centralized literary censorship system to prevent what he considered subversive literature. I will not explain all the system of censorship, the prior censorship, but for example, all the books that would be published in Spain need to pass by 3 censors, no? And a very bureaucratic system of censorship. Any policy governing publishing inevitable entails a process of selection regardless of the criteria that informs such selection. However, when this process takes place within the framework of a fascist or fascisticide regime that relies on censorship, the 2 dimensions of book policy, promotion and prohibition, become closely interrelated and mutually dependent, both aiming to achieve the same ideological objectives. Thus, the censorship and promotion of books must be understood as complementary aspects of the same culture policy. Through prizes, creation of institutions, and censorship, the new states sought to establish the category of the nation's books. In this sense, in Italy, the Mussolini government had implemented a new culture policy. This fascist cultural policy alternated between punishment and rewarded in such a way, I don't know how to say in Italy, politica del bastone e della carrota, that it was capable of controlling what could or could not be published or rewarded. In Italy, the Premio Mussolini Prize was created in order to award literary prizes to authors. A woman writer, Ada Negri, was awarded the Mussolini Prize in 1931, and in 1940, she became the first woman to become a member of the Accademia d'Italia. With these prizes, many writers were favored by official patronage and began to defend the fascist regime with great enthusiasm. Inspired by the Mussolini Prize in Spain, Brazil, and Portugal, similar literary prizes were established. In Spain, we have the Francisco Franco Prize and José Antonio Primo de Rivera Prize. And in Brazil, we have another national prize, Machado de Assis, and in Portugal, Essa de Queiroz Prize and an Antero de Quental Prize. As we can see from the titles of the literary prize, the Brazilian and Portuguese governments preferred to honor literary figures, while in Italy and Spain, they were more personal and populist in naming dictators or fascist leaders, such as José Antonio Primo de Rivera, the fascist leader in Spain. So, thus, on both sides of Atlantic, official institutional bodies related to the book with similar objectives were established, creating a kind of spirit prizes or soul prizes. The Política do Espírito, Politic of the Spirit, was an expression created by the intellectual Antônio Ferro, leader of the Secretary for National Propaganda in Portugal under the leadership of Salazar. It referred to the organized and established resistance to a body of literature that dirty the spirit. This notion would guide the actions of the new states in the field of literary policy. Prizes will also establish a set of writers who come to represent good reading and attempt to build a historical or literary tradition. The most important that I already said in Franco regime was the Francisco Franco Prize and José Antonio Prize, Literary Prize, on which the Falange Espanhola, the fascist movement, left their indelible mark. After the conflict and amidst a climate of great uncertainty, the Franco regime established a new set of prizes and literary competitions that aim to support the production of books embodying the national spirit. In this sense, in Spain, but also in Portugal and Brazil, institutions for cultural and literary promotion were created. In Portugal, the Secretary for National Propaganda. In Spain, Spanish National Book Institute. In the Brazil, National Book Institute. Unlike Spain, during the Salazar and Vargas regime, many opposition intellectuals collaborated in cultural promotion institutions in order to create consensus, despite the fact that many were also censored. Examples are Jorge Amado in Brazil and Miguel Torga in Portugal. In the Spanish case, this did not exist. Having emerged victorious in the Spanish Civil War, the Franco regime proceeded to impose its ideology relentlessly on all aspects of Spanish life. Literature was one of the elements most affected by the imposition, with little possibility of developing an alternative culture to the official one. In terms of cultural diplomatic relations during the fascist era, mutual solidarity existed in the cultural and literary field, especially between Spain, Germany, and Italy. The support provided by these nations during the Spanish Civil War allowed Spain to occupy a leading position in the field of culture. Literature became an indirect means to ensure the diffusion of political propaganda aimed at garnering sympathy for Axis cause. Germany, Italy, Portugal, and Vichy France were among the nations that sent the largest number of books to Spain. Through a framework of cultural diplomatic relations, book agreements were established with almost all Italian research institutes and some Portuguese institutes, and a specific agreement between Spain and Germany was established through Biblioteca Nacional and German Foreign Book Exchange. This literary corpus sheds light on the political and cultural values that Franco regime sought to transmit through literature. The government used literature as a tool of attraction as it attempted to form a type of cultural community with other authoritarian political systems amidst a context of extreme international isolation. Unsurprisingly, exported writers such as Menendez Pelayo and Ramiro de Maeztu represented the Spanish conservative and Catholic tradition, and many were Spanish fascist ideologies, such as Jiménez Caballero, José Antonio, and the poet Pemán. Naturally, this selection included eminent writers and thinkers who had come to fill the void left by the Republican authors, simultaneously positioning themselves as key figures in the new literary canon. With this new anthology of the regime's ideas, a national image was promoted, inseparable from the deep-seated values of traditional Spain. The Franco regime also promoted commercial and cultural agreements with Latin American countries through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and sent Spanish delegation to the Latin American continent. In order to strengthening ties with American countries, Spain cultivated relations with Lusophone countries, particularly Portugal, and to a lesser extent Brazil. Spanish books were well received by the Portuguese reading public, and Spain, in fact, was the second largest exporter of books to Portugal. Spain also hoped to expand into the Brazilian market because of the potential of Brazil as a population of more than 44 million and two cities with a population of more than 1 million. Meant sales there could reach a number comparable to those in Portugal. However, Brazilian books had great difficulty entering in Spain. More than 50% did not pass Franco's prior censorship, as most of them were considered pornographic or communist literature. Following the example and guidance of fascist governments, Franco recognized literature as an auspicious field capable of legitimizing their dictatorship and the values that proclaim. The expansion abroad of intellectual solidarity with those fascisticide regime was an essential element that added legitimacy to the culture agenda at home. On the other hand, another significant aspect of official policy regarding the book was its nationalizing purpose. Anthologies gained importance and genres designed to create an image of pantheon of national writers who, from their mythologized position, would lend prestige and legitimacy to the regimes. The writers of the past were tied to the discourse of the present, thus establishing an apparent likeness between yesterday and today. Prizes also established a set of writers who came to represent good reading as reading of the national spirit and attempt to build a historical and literary national tradition. In this sense, censorship in Spain functioned in two complementary ways. On the one hand, by rigorously suppressing everything that was not in harmony with the regime, and on the other, by actively promoting the works that were deemed appropriate through national policies and cultural diplomacy with ideologically aligned countries. Promotion and censorship thus went hand in hand through the fascist era. So thank you very much.